Hi, Kathy. I'm so
Hi.
excited to meet with you today. For you to give us some more information and details about your recently released book, called Making Schools Work and bringing the science of learning to joyful classroom practice. So I have a few
You.
questions for you.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd like to know what led to you and the co-authors writing this book.
Well, the biggest thing that led us to write this book is that I realized that often we tell people what to do.
Oh, yeah.
We don't work with people to figure out what to do. And I was astonished that this is maybe the first, for certainly the first I know of, where scientists and teachers and school administrators all sat down together to say, what works? Let's pull together the best of what we know. And with the knowledge of what happens in real classrooms with real students. And we wrote this book together.
That's great. That's really great. I like the idea of, you saying people sitting down together and getting out what
Yes,
works best. Another
yes.
question I have is like, what was the writing process like for you and your co-authors? What did you have to get into to get this, this like book that is gonna make a real impact on education and the lives of young children? What was the writing process like for you and your co-authors?
Well, the first thing you have to do when you come from different places is to sit down and share perspective and say, this is what I see when I'm working with real children. This is what I'm seeing when I'm running a school. This is what we're seeing from the science of how human brains learn. So we did a lot of talking. And then we asked ourselves, what does that look like if we translate it? And we literally sat for weeks and wrote down, this is the first thing you need to do, which is to be attentive to the values of our students and our parents and our community. And that really rang true to us. It was almost like borrowing from human design, right? Human design centered approaches to say, okay, where are people at? And then we asked, what does the science tell us about how people learn? And it turns out that there are some simple characteristics that make sense. It's like a duh once you know them. That human brains learn best when they're active, not passive, when something's meaningful, when it's not disembodied, when we're engaged in it and we want to actually make it happen, we want to learn it. Well, that makes sense when we're socially interactive, when we're working in groups or working with the teacher and there's a relationship, when we're problem solving, and when it's joyful. And what we realized as we talked this out in our process is that in many countries around the world, we've lost the joy of teaching. And when
Yes.
we lose the joy of teaching, our students lose the joy of learning and discovery. And we wanted to know, how could we bring it back? Joyous teaching and deeper learning became our motto. So we kept working with that motto. And then we got to the final part, which was a question that we really thought we should ask in schools and governments around the world. What do we want our graduates to look like? Whether they're little teeny kids or whether they're high school graduates, do we just want to say of them they did really well in a math and reading test? Or is that not all there is? And when we thought about it, we came up with what we called the 6 C's, that we want our children to be collaborators, to learn how to work in teams, to work with each other, to work with us. We want our children to be good communicators, who are good listeners, not just good blabbers. We want our children to have that content in reading and math, but also in learning how to learn. If knowledge is changing every 12 hours, we double the amount we've known in the whole world, then tomorrow it's going to double again and again and again. We have to know how to learn new things. and have an approach to learning. And on top of that, to be critical thinkers and to be creative innovators, and then to have the confidence to try, even if we fail. And I want to give you an example of not only our process as we went through, but there are new things that come out every day. Just last week, GPT came out. It writes essays for you. I don't know if you've tried it. Well, we as teachers want our children not just to pull the stuff together, but for us to be our voice and to be critical. So we came up with an equation, a 3-part equation: cultural values, plus the science of how children learn, plus the science of what we want our children to graduate with. And then, having figured that out, we said, how did it work in my school? How did it work in mine? What's the theory? Show us what you did. And that's what the book is about.
That is amazing. The things you are mentioning, I cannot wait to share this interview with our members. And now we have Vikas Poto, who's really interested in this book as well. He's joining us to just be here in the interview. And while he's coming in, I'd like to ask you the next question.
Sure.
Why do you feel that this book will make an impact on educators and transforming education?
I've always believed in teachers. I believe that we are, because I am a teacher, that we are professionals. We are professionals just like doctors and just like lawyers and just like dentists, even though they don't pay us as well. We know what we're doing. And I think that if we use the professionalism of teachers and we marry that with what we know in the science of learning and are sensitive to the cultures we are all working in, and we all know this as teachers, we know that it's not one size fits all, and that a curriculum always has to be adapted for the class I have. And even my classes change every year because they have a different makeup, a different chemistry. We believe that when we create something that is by teachers, with teachers, not just for teachers, that together we can build a world where we can change education now from the inside out, not from the top down. So that's why I really think this is going to be revolutionary.
Thank you. And that's what we need.
Hi, Kathy. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm looking forward to Christmas.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
And
it's coming soon.
I know that Jasmine is recording this. Jasmine, am I allowed to just say hello and thank you? Or would you?
Absolutely. Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you guys so much for doing this interview. We are so proud of it. The way I looked at the book and sort of tell from the cover is that a lot of schools around the country are doing what's up here,
Yeah.
and we need to be doing more of what's down here. So the whole book is really, how do you move from up here to down here?
Okay.
Yeah, that brings me to my next question.
Yeah.
Do you highly recommend that to read this book?
Who do I recommend?
Mm.
Oh, well, I would maybe start with my fellow teachers.
Okay.
And professors and administrators. But honestly, I am so hoping that people who run ministries of education and are in government can finally see what would work. Because I think as business people, they come at us all the time with these new ideas that are supposed to revolutionize education on the ground around the world. And again, I want to rely on the professionalism of teachers and the professionalism of those of us who study the science of learning. Please, let's do this right. Children can be happy learning and learn more deeply and come out with the very characteristics that you all want in the business world when they graduate. Give us a chance to teach them precisely those skills. I know we can all do it. We just need the opportunity to have a voice.
Yes, definitely. I cannot agree with you more. You also make a statement on your website that like in guided play or playful learning,
Yes.
children
Yes.
should take the lead, and that adults should just be supporting them through props and interacting in different ways. How
Mhm.
does your book make it possible for adults, teachers and
Yes.
parents alike to implement these methods you are mentioning on your website?
Well, I thank you for asking that question, because we spent a lot of time in our process talking about that. And we realized that if we just wrote a book that was theoretical on what we thought would work, that wouldn't be enough. So in this book, we actually show people how to do it, step by step.
Thank you.
And in a sense, it's a theory book plus a how-to book. And we also are now running workshops to show people how to do that in a study that we're just about to start in the United States. But I hope this will give people an inkling. You know, the richest thing in the world, and we've learned this, though we don't often do it in college education, is that when students come to us and they become the discoverers, and they become the scientists themselves and the learners themselves, that's when they really dig in and know it. Not when we just tell them. And I want to give you an example. I'm going to a place tomorrow with my 5 and 7-year-old. And I realized that all these Roman architectural wonders are going to mean absolutely nothing to my 5 and 7-year-old. So the other day, I posed my children with my grandchildren with a problem. I said, we have a problem. We have a big lake over here that has fresh water. We have a big city over here that won't have fresh water unless you can get the water from the lake over to the city. But here's a problem. We don't have plumbing. How do you suspect we could do it? I gave them a bunch of Legos and I said, solve the problem. And they actually came up with an aqueduct. Now, I tell you that because when they now see the aqueduct, they're going to, for the first time, truly understand what it meant to create a watering system in a time period 1,000 years ago. Imagine if our education allowed our children to discover, and we sat there and helped by framing the problems.
Thank you for that. It's all about the student and kind of really getting them to be creative and innovative. So my final question, Kathy.
Sure.
What advice do you have for potential writers within our app?
For potential
Writers.
Oh, for potential writers. Wow, the most important thing for writers, I think, is to listen. Not just to think that what you know is what should be. Hear others, respect others, reflect others. And when we do, we get a cultural mosaic that allows us to be optimally inclusive of our students and our parents and our community. Every student in every school, for every classroom that we teach, has itself a mosaic of people who have come from families that have needs and desires and values, and they come from communities. The more we reinforce in the classroom what's going on outside the classroom, the more we make homeschool connections, and the richer our education will be. So writers, be listeners, not just writers.
Thank you so much, Kathy. I am looking forward to the spotlight you'll be doing for our community on the 26th of January. And we look forward to hearing more about your research, the science behind everything you do, and like, you know, all this new pedagogies you are suggesting for you to take a deep dive into it and share with our community. Thank you for this interview.
Thank you so much for including me, Jasmine, because I can't tell you, I just feel so warm that we're going to be able to work with real teachers around the world and to borrow and learn from their creativity.